Hello, welcome. My name is Adedunfa. Today we'll be talking about a challenging topic for many governments. We're going to be shining our perspective on leading change in the public sector. Indeed, in many African economies, the concept of public sector basically just conjures images of operational inefficiency, of waste, of bureaucracy, and many other negative things. Indeed, in many cases, it could also include corruption. So in many ways, change and public sector simply don't go together. On the other hand, we've got IT. IT is well known as an agent to be able to effect change on a sustainable basis. IT's famed benefits include the ability to improve operational efficiency, staff productivity, management effectiveness, and indeed transparency in governance. It will therefore seem logical that if we're trying to effect change in the public sector, we might want to use IT as a vehicle, as an agent to effect that change. However, the job of applying IT to the public sector in Africa is not one for the faint-hearted. There are many instances where it's resulted in, if anything else, magnified inefficiencies. We've found situations where it's resulted in disparate, multiple, silo networks and applications. We found that it has led in many cases, unfortunately, to poor fiscal accountability, challenged supply and overall management processes. Uncoordinated service delivery and management and support have resulted. The approach to training and manpower development is at best ad hoc and uncoordinated. And in many cases, we also have what I would refer to as a bolt-on approach to information security, leading to many gaps and many vulnerabilities that can lead to cyber attacks resulting in stolen or compromised information. Wow, a dismal picture, you may say. Indeed. However, the good news is that it need not remain that way. My guest today is someone who has taken up the formidable challenge of using IT to lead change in the public sector. A brave man, you may say. I'd like to welcome my guest today, John Ayoh.
Thank you.
The Director of IT at the Central Bank. Thank you so much, John, for joining us.
Thank you
for taking time out of your dizzyingly hectic schedule. John Ayoh has responsibility for IT at the highest level at the Central Bank of Nigeria, being appointed as the Director of that division. He's an accomplished professional. He's got wide-ranging experience from the telecom sector, from the banking sector, at very senior levels. He's held positions in one of the telcos, Airtel specifically, from the origination to when he left, having operated as Chief Operating Officer and the Director for the Network Implementation. Prior to joining Airtel, John had been CIO of 3 banks. Quite an impressive resume, you may say. So John, my first question for you. Since you've assumed this very strategic and pivotal role as IT Director at the CBN, what has been your experience?
Thank you very much, Doi. I've had to grapple with 3 forces of change during this period. The first is that the central bank itself is going through its own transformation internally. So we have a new strategy for the bank to really transform the CBN and be able to ensure that its mandate is effectively achieved. Then, of course, within the IT environment across the world, we are seeing major transformation in terms of big data, different things happening. Yes. There's a new digital atmosphere out there that organizations must have to find a way to grapple with. Then thirdly, within Nigeria's own financial service industry, there has been several changes. Some driven by the central bank, some driven by the larger economy out there. So I will say that in essence, I've had a quite interesting and challenging, as well as rewarding experience since I joined. Challenging in the sense that there's really no dull moment because there's something happening that you have to react to. And rewarding because if I look back in the past 2 years, I've also seen that we've achieved some very credible feats in central bank.
Interesting. Looking from outside in, I have observed significant change. From your own internal and privileged perspective, what key changes would you say have been effected over the last, it's 2 years since you've been at the bank?
That's right, yeah.
Yes. What have those changes been?
Well, first of all, the first thing that we did, and I was lucky to be part of that process, is to embark upon a 5-year IT strategy. And what that has done is chart the course for us over the next several years. And we basically measure ourselves against those goals that we have set ourselves. During that period, we have restructured the IT department. We have built capacity for the staff. We've changed the agent infrastructure into a more robust one. Our applications are more robust and less problematic now. We used to have issues with financial statements on a daily basis because of errors, but we basically did a reimplementation of certain aspects of that, and we, for the past 1 year, have not seen any additional occurrences of those errors. So that has been stabilized. But I think probably the most important achievement to date has been the fact that we've taken the bank through the path to attain certification for the ISO 27001 for information security practice. I recall that actually earlier this month, we held the ceremony when the certificate was issued to us. And the British High Commission actually made a statement that he feels that about projected £8 billion sterling of investment will flow into Nigeria because of the confidence that the central bank has brought to investors out there because of this attainment of the certification. It's not been without its challenges, really. But before I go into challenges, what are my critical success factors, for instance? I must say that my bosses have been very, very helpful in helping to ensure that, actually helping to drive the entire process. I'm happy that when I joined, I wasn't the only one coming from private sector. Right. There were 4 other people, and so the team was ready and sound and ready to really run. And we have colleagues out there who also see the value of IT and has been very, very helpful. Most importantly is the fact that the central bank itself is at a time when it actually wants to move to the next level so that it can set examples for the banks that it regulates. The challenges basically center on the fact that being a private sector, you need to follow certain processes that seem to slow you down from meeting your goals. So in some respects, we have been slow in meeting some of our milestones in time. But having said that, when we look back as well, we think that we've made a lot of progress.
A lot of progress. I must say a lot of progress. And some would say slow and steady. Win the race. Okay, so there have been a lot of achievements, and as you say, not without challenges. But let's look at a pan-African view. Are there any collaborations with the central bank and other central reserve banks across Africa, especially as relates to IT? And what form are those collaborations taking? What kind of benefits do we expect to see?
Well, at the strategic level, beyond IT, we've had and keep having collaborations with the Federal Reserve Banks, New York, Atlanta, and some other ones, depending on the subject matter. We've had collaborations with Bank Nagara. We actually did a benchmarking with them. Okay. On the IT side, we have gone to Bank of Ghana just to compare notes with them. We're going to be going to the Bank of Morocco, where we want to look at what they've done in enterprise content management, which we have started as well. And there is this annual seminar in Cambridge University, whereby all the central banks across the world, and particularly those in Africa, are in attendance, where they basically compare notes and try and chart the way forward as to what the best practices will be in central banking.
Interesting. It's interesting that you mentioned best practice as well, because I think that since the new team have come to the central bank, that's one thing that you've been emphasizing. What role do you see best practice standards having in the industry in Nigeria and across African economies, and how do you think that central bank can help to put some of those in place or encourage the adoption of best practice standards?
In fact, if you look at last year, that precisely is what we've been doing. We have the Financial Industry Transformation Program, and one of the tenets of that program is to roll out to all commercial banks a set of standards that they must adhere to. One of them is the ISO 27001, of which we have shown leadership. And over the next 5 years or so, there are several deadlines and milestones that they must meet in meeting those standards. And we believe that if banks adopt those standards, that their operations will be more efficient, and that will drive down costs to the to the man on the street. And you know that interest rates at the end of the day are cost-based. So if you can drive down operational costs, of course, the common man out there will also see benefits.
Excellent. Being a firm that is focused on the implementation of best practice standards, that's music to our ears. Yeah. But my final question for you, John, is what practical advice do you have for other IT professionals, people who are charged with that responsibility to lead change through IT, whether they're in the public or private sector? I mean, you've done this very successfully. What key tips, techniques are you going to leave behind for them?
From my central bank experience, I think the most critical thing is really engagement and collaboration. It's a major change management initiative, really. And you must engage. You must let them understand and communicate and let them see value in what you are trying to do. And IT professionals must also take a sustained and strategic approach to whatever they do to ensure that it aligns with the business. Not necessarily going with what is the flavor of the month, but how the business will benefit from it. And again, you can get frustrated easily because of the slow pace of change. So I'll advise that they use what I'll call the progress principle, whereby you don't measure progress in leaps and bounds, but one step at a time. And I think with that, that'll be very helpful to them.
Engagement, collaboration, top management buy-in, patience, one step at a time. These are tips that John has left with us in the short period that he's shared with us, the benefits of his experience. I'd like to thank you so much for joining us, John.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we look forward to meeting with you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Wow, that was quick. Thank you.